Wilhelm Wundt, presented by Joanna, Anna, and Erica. Wilhelm Wundt was born on August 16, 1832 in Baden, Germany. He attended the University of Tübingen, Heidelberg, and Berlin from 1851 until graduating in 1856 from the University of Heidelberg in medicine. In 1858, Wilhelm became an assistant to Helmholtz at the University of Heidelberg. Later, he became professor at Heidelberg, teaching psychological psychology in 1864. The University of Leipzig appointed him professor in 1875, where he created the first ever psychology laboratory in 1879. On August 31st, 1920, Wilhelm died at the age of 88. He is now considered the father of psychology.
In Wilhelm Wundt's time, psychology was seen as a branch of philosophy. He's considered the father of psychology, and this is because he separated the two apart. He took psychology into its own field by creating the experimental field of psychology. It was actually him who was the first person to open up a laboratory, an experimental laboratory, and he opened it in 1879 in the University of Leipzig, Germany. Wundt concentrated on three things. His concentration was focused on thoughts, images, and feelings. These are the areas that we now know of. We know that they're a part of mental functioning. Today we cover these in cognitive psychology, although they actually link back to Wundt. One of Wundt's main contributions to psychology was his findings and opinions on introspection. We use this word a lot in the course so far, and it basically means like an examination or observation of your own mental and emotional processes. So with that being said, Wundt believed that there were always two sides to everything. There was a side that was measurable in a laboratory, and the other side is your psychological side. Okay? Another thing that links to Wundt is reductionism. Reductionism basically means breaking things down into basic elements. And this is exactly what he would do. Wundt's experiments would involve people explaining how they would feel about certain objects in terms of the senses they feel and see, and this was always measured by self-report and observation. So we have an example here, which is basically a picture of an apple, and something that Wundt would ask an observer to do is to describe what they see. So take a look at the apple and just think for a second how you would describe this apple. So basically you can explain it by saying things like it's cold, it's sweet, it's crisp, it's red, but you can't say something like an apple is an apple.
There are two major limitations to Wundt's research. The first being that structuralism no longer exists. Essentially, his ideas do not continue on to modern day. The main reason for this is due to his methodology. Modern standards of experimental psychology requires for experiments to have limited experimenter bias and maximum objectivity. Wundt's research was riddled with his own biases. The subjects in his experiments were his own students, who he trained. He taught his students introspection, and he taught them how to do these detailed self-reports. He told them what responses he was looking for, and therefore those were the kind of responses his students would give him. He would also resolve any conflicts that would have came up. The results of his experiments were unreliable. Another limitation to Wundt's research was that his research focused on unobservable behaviors. The subjects of the experiments would report their conscious experience, but these are internal behaviors and cannot be observed or measured. In modern day, psychology focuses more on observable behaviors that can be measured. Wundt's research no longer meets this new standard. Wundt's greatest contribution to psychology was that he made psychology a valid experimental science. He developed an experimental method for conducting psychological research. He required research to be more scientific, and that experiments should be conducted under controlled conditions. He inspired other researchers in his field to follow this experimental approach. Wundt was the founder of experimental psychology. He was the first person to insist that research should follow an experimental method, shaping how psychological experiments are done to this day.